The laughter hit Marcus before the words did. "Nice little car, huh?" Officer Kane sneered, tapping the hood with his baton like it was a toy. Marcus's hands stayed calm on the wheel, heart steady. He hadn't broken any law. Yet the cuffs clicked around his wrists moments later, and Kane had no idea who he was really arresting. The night was quiet, the streets nearly empty. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting pale circles of light on the asphalt. Marcus Reed drove steadily, his hands relaxed on the steering wheel. He wasn't in a rush. The courthouse was long behind him, and home wasn't far now. A warm meal, a little quiet, a chance to rest. That was all he wanted. His car wasn't flashy. A mid-sized sedan, clean but ordinary. Nothing about him or the vehicle screamed trouble, but trouble had a way of finding its own target. From behind, the sudden flash of red and blue lights tore through the calm. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. A patrol car tailed him closely, lights blazing. His brow furrowed. He hadn't been speeding. He hadn't broken any law. Still, he eased the car to the curb, signaling properly before stopping. The cruiser pulled in behind him, tires grinding against the gravel. A figure stepped out, broad-shouldered, uniform crisp, badge gleaming under the streetlights. Officer Bradley Kane. Marcus lowered his window, keeping both hands visible on the wheel. Years of instinct, years of understanding how these moments can turn. His voice was calm when he spoke. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Kane approached slowly, swagger in his stride. His flashlight beam swept across the inside of the car, pausing on Marcus's face before darting down to the passenger seat, the floorboards, the glove compartment. He sneered. "Problem?" "That's what I'm here to figure out." Marcus remained still. "I don't believe I've broken any laws." Kane chuckled, low and derisive. "Didn't signal when you turned onto Oak Street back there. Looks sloppy, looks suspicious." Marcus blinked. "I used my signal. Don't get smart with me." Kane tapped the roof of the car with his flashlight, sharp and deliberate. "Step out." Now. Marcus hesitated only for a second before complying. He opened the door carefully and stepped into the night air. His posture was composed, his movements deliberate. He knew escalation came quickly if a man like Kane sensed resistance. Kane circled him, eyes sharp, searching for something, anything, to twist into justification. "Where you headed?" "Home," Marcus replied. "From where?" "The courthouse." That made Kane's brow twitch. "Courthouse, huh? What were you doing there?" "Work." Marcus's answer was simple, even, offering no cracks for Kane to pry open. Kane smirked, mistaking restraint for weakness. "Work. Sure. You look like the type to find trouble and call it work." Without warning, Kane patted him down, hands aggressive, rougher than protocol required. Finding nothing, he pulled back with a scowl. "License and registration." Marcus retrieved them calmly, handing the documents over without shaking hands. Kane glanced at them briefly, then scoffed. "Read. Figures." He didn't explain what that meant. Instead, he turned, walked back toward his cruiser, and radioed something in. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he saw the smirk return to Kane's face as he returned. "Step to the back of the vehicle," Kane ordered. Marcus complied, his heart steady. "You know what I think?" Kane said, his voice dripping with authority. "I think you're out here looking for trouble. Maybe drugs, maybe worse. I think you're hiding it well, but not well enough." "That's not true," Marcus said, still calm. "Doesn't matter what you say." It matters what I write in the report. Kane reached for his cuffs. Marcus's jaw tightened. You're arresting me for what? Kane grinned. Obstruction. Resisting my investigation. Call it whatever you like. Either way, you're coming with me. Cold steel closed around Marcus's wrists. The sound of the cuffs locking echoed louder than the hum of the streetlights. See? Kane whispered in his ear, smug and certain. Guys like you always end up in the same place. You can act calm, act smart, but I know the truth. You're nothing but another case for me to close. Marcus said nothing. He didn't resist. He didn't plead. He simply straightened, his dignity intact even in chains. Because Marcus knew something Kane did not. This story wasn't ending here. This was only the beginning. The station buzzed with its usual late-night rhythm, phones ringing, typewriters clacking, the low hum of conversations half heard. Officer Kane strutted in with Marcus in tow, his grip firm on the cuffs as though parading a trophy. Picked him up cruising suspiciously through my district, Kane announced to the desk sergeant, smugness dripping from every word. Didn't cooperate, resisted questioning. Thought he was clever. The sergeant barely looked up, just pushed a clipboard forward. Book him. Marcus stayed composed, his face unreadable. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He didn't correct Kane's lies. He simply allowed the process to unfold, step by step. Fingerprinting. Mugshot. Paperwork. To the officers, he was just another body in the system, another name on a page. None of them recognized him. Not yet. When he was finally led to a holding cell, the clang of the bars echoed harshly in the concrete room. A few men were already inside, one sprawled on the bench asleep, another staring at the floor, a third watching Marcus with guarded curiosity. Marcus sat quietly, back straight, his hands resting on his knees. The eyes of the others lingered on him, studying, measuring, but he gave them nothing. Only calm. Only silence. From down the hall came laughter. Kane's voice rang out, cocky and booming. Another one off the streets. These guys always think they're smarter than me, but they're all the same. His words were met with a few chuckles from passing officers. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound wash over him without reaction. He had heard arrogance before. He knew better than to waste energy on it now. One of the men in the cell leaned toward him. What did they get you for? Marcus opened his eyes, his tone even. Driving. The man raised a brow. That's it? That's it, Marcus said simply. A dry chuckle. Figures. The hours stretched. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, painting everything in a pale, sickly glow. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale sweat. Time moved slowly here, but Marcus remained still, patient. He thought of his new robe, still hanging in his office at the courthouse, of the oath he had sworn only days ago, of the irony that the very system he had sworn to uphold was now treating him as though he were invisible. But Marcus knew better. Patience was power. Silence was strategy. And when the time came, the truth would not just speak. It would thunder. The night dragged on. Some men slept, others whispered. Marcus remained still, patient, watching the minutes tick toward dawn. When the morning came, breakfast trays clattered through the bars. Rubbery eggs, toast gone cold. Marcus didn't touch his. His mind was elsewhere. Not long after, a guard arrived. Read. On your feet. You've got arraignment. Marcus rose calmly, smoothing the wrinkles from his shirt. The other men watched him, curious about his quiet composure. The guard let him out, cuffs clicking back into place. The walk down the corridor was long, every step echoing against the concrete. Kane was waiting near the desk, his grin as wide as ever. "Looks like you're in for a rough morning," Kane said, adjusting his belt. "Hope you like judges who don't go easy." Marcus studied him for a brief moment. Then, with quiet certainty, he said, "I'm sure I'll manage." Kane chuckled, misreading his calm as defeat. "Yeah, sure you will." But deep down, Marcus knew something Kane did not. The courtroom was waiting, and the tables were about to turn. The walk from the holding cell to the transport van was long and heavy, every step echoing with the clink of chains. Marcus kept his posture upright, each movement deliberate, calm. Around him, other men shuffled forward with their heads low, some muttering under their breath, others silent with resignation. Officer Kane trailed at the back of the line, his boots striking the floor with sharp confidence. He leaned toward another officer, his voice low but still audible to Marcus. "This one's an easy write-up. Judge will have him processed and fined before lunch. Another win for me." Marcus didn't react. He let the words pass like wind against stone. But inside, he held the irony close. He knew Kane believed this was just another notch in his belt. And Kane had no idea how wrong he was. The van ride to the courthouse was cramped and noisy, metal benches rattling as it bounced over potholes. Marcus sat quietly, eyes forward, tuning out the complaints and jokes around him. His mind was already on the day ahead, not with fear, but with measured patience. When they arrived, the group was escorted inside, chains removed, bodies funneled into holding rooms until their names would be called. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and paper, a scent Marcus knew intimately. It felt strange to stand here in shackles, in the very place he usually entered robed and commanding. Strange, but not unfamiliar. Life had a way of testing dignity in the harshest ways. The door creaked open, and a woman in a dark suit stepped inside. Her stride was brisk, her eyes sharp behind rectangular glasses. She carried a folder tucked under one arm and introduced herself with a clipped tone. "Marcus Reed." Marcus nodded. "I'm Lisa Grant, public defender assigned to your case." She extended her hand, then paused, noticing the cuffs. "Right. Well, we'll talk." She pulled up a chair across from him and opened the folder. "Charges say resisting investigation and obstructing an officer." She raised a brow. "Want to tell me your side?" Marcus studied her, his gaze steady. He could have revealed everything in that moment, who he really was, the irony of the situation. But he didn't. Instead, he said simply, "I was driving home. He stopped me for no reason. The rest, you can imagine." Lisa's lips pressed into a thin line. She had heard versions of this story before. Too many times. "And you didn't resist?" "No," Marcus replied firmly. She leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly, as if sensing something different about him. His composure, his tone, it wasn't the usual panic or anger she often saw. He carried himself with calm authority, even here. "You seem unusually calm about this," she remarked. Marcus allowed the faintest smile. "I've dealt with courts before." Lisa studied him for a long moment, then closed the folder. "Well, either way, we'll challenge this. There's no evidence, no cause for the stop, but Kane..." She gestured vaguely toward the hall. "He's known for making noise. He'll come in loud, confident. Judges don't always question him." Marcus's eyes glinted. "Some judges do." Lisa tilted her head, intrigued but not pressing further. "Arraignment's in an hour. Stay steady. Don't react to him, no matter what he says." "I won't," Marcus assured. When she left, Marcus sat back, letting the silence settle. The clock ticked slowly on the wall, each minute dragging closer to the reveal. He thought of Kane, pacing somewhere nearby, rehearsing his lies, convinced the morning belonged to him. He thought of the courtroom, the gasp it would hold when the truth emerged. And he thought of justice, not as vengeance, but as balance restored. Down the corridor, Kane bragged to another officer, his voice carrying. "This one will be easy. Judge will believe every word. They always do. Just another day putting them in their place." Marcus closed his eyes and breathed deeply. For Kane, it was just another day. For Marcus, it was the day the mask would shatter. A guard opened the door. "Reed, time to move." Marcus stood, his posture unshaken. The cuffs clicked around his wrists again, but they no longer felt like chains. They felt like props, temporary illusions in a play that was about to end. He walked steadily down the corridor, the doors ahead swinging open to reveal the familiar wood-paneled courtroom. The place where justice was meant to live. The place where Kane's arrogance would finally meet its match. Marcus stepped inside, and as he did, he allowed himself one final thought. The tables are about to turn. The courthouse buzzed with routine chatter, papers shuffling, lawyers whispering to clients, the scrape of chairs on polished floors. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, catching the seal above the bench, giving the room its usual air of solemn order. Marcus sat at the defense table, wrists still cuffed, his posture calm. To most, he looked like another defendant waiting for judgment. But beneath his composure, he carried the quiet knowledge that this day would not end the way Officer Kane imagined. Kane swaggered in, uniform crisp, badge gleaming, smirk fixed like it had been etched into his face. He spotted Marcus immediately and let out a low chuckle as he passed. "Enjoy this view while it lasts," he muttered. "Next stop, jail." Marcus said nothing. His silence unsettled more than words could have. The bailiff called, "All rise." Chairs scraped back, and the room stood as the side door opened. The clerk hurried to the bench, a folder clutched in her hand. She glanced down at the paperwork, then froze. Her eyes darted to the defense table. Confusion. Recognition. Shock. She leaned quickly toward the presiding judge, whispering urgently. The judge frowned, lifted his gaze, and studied Marcus. A shift rippled through the room, attorneys pausing mid-sentence, reporters leaning forward, the gallery whispering in hushed tones. Kane squinted, his smirk faltering as the air thickened with tension. The bailiff's voice rang out again, this time firmer, almost reverent. "This court recognizes the Honorable Judge Marcus Reed, recently appointed to this bench." Gasps swept through the courtroom like a wave. Heads turned, whispers erupted, the atmosphere crackling with disbelief. Marcus rose slowly. The bailiff, flustered, rushed forward to unlock the cuffs, his hands trembling as he freed Marcus's wrists. Marcus smoothed his sleeves with deliberate calm, then turned, not toward the gallery, but toward the bench. The presiding judge gave a grave nod. "Judge Reed, though this is unusual, the circumstances demand clarity. This court acknowledges your standing. If you wish to address the matter, the floor is yours." Marcus stepped forward, the weight of every eye following him. His voice, steady and clear, carried across the silent room. "Yesterday, I was placed under arrest by Officer Bradley Kane, not for a crime, not for evidence, but because of bias, assumption, and abuse of authority. Every word landed heavy, each syllable cutting through the stunned quiet. Kane sat frozen, color draining from his face, the swagger stripped from his posture. The words landed like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Attorneys exchanged quick, startled glances. Reporters scribbled furiously, pens scratching across paper. A woman in the back covered her mouth, whispering, "He's a judge?" While others leaned forward, eager not to miss a single moment. The bailiff, usually composed, looked rattled as he pocketed the cuffs he'd just unlocked. Even Lisa Grant, the public defender, sat stunned, her eyes wide, realization dawning that her client wasn't who she thought at all. All the while, Kane sat rigid at the prosecution table. His smirk, so confident minutes ago, had drained from his face, leaving him pale and tight-jawed. His fingers drummed against his belt, then clenched, then opened again, restless, nervous. Sweat traced a line down his temple. He looked like a man suddenly shoved beneath a spotlight, with nowhere to hide. Murmurs grew louder, swelling until the presiding judge struck his gavel once. Crack. The room stilled, but the tension only thickened. "Judge Reed," the presiding judge said formally, his voice steady but tinged with respect, "this court acknowledges your standing. Under these circumstances, it is only right that you be heard." He gestured lightly. "The floor is yours." Every head turned back to Marcus. The room held its breath. Marcus stepped forward, adjusting his sleeves with quiet precision, his posture tall, unshaken. His eyes moved slowly across the courtroom, over the gallery, over the clerk, over the defense and prosecution, before settling squarely on Officer Kane. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but unyielding. "Yesterday," Marcus began, his voice steady, deliberate. "Officer Kane stopped me without cause. I was driving home from work, obeying every law, yet I was pulled over. Why? Not because of my driving, not because of any evidence of wrongdoing, because of who I am and how he chose to see me." He let the words hang. The silence was suffocating, every ear strained to catch each syllable. Kane shifted in his seat, his jaw tight, his hands clasped together to mask the tremor in his fingers. Marcus continued, eyes never leaving him. He searched for a reason to justify his suspicion. When none existed, he created one. Driving too slow. Resisting investigation. Words twisted into accusations, fabricated into charges. And when I complied, when I remained calm, when I followed every order, he still chose to tighten the cuffs and declare his power. Murmurs rose again in the gallery. A defense attorney whispered to his colleague, "Fabricated charges." While the reporters' pens flew even faster. The gavel struck once from the presiding judge. Crack. Silence. Marcus stepped closer to the center of the room. His tone sharpened, but his composure never cracked. "This is not about me being a judge. This is about what happens every day to citizens who do not wear this robe. To men and women who are stopped, searched, and silenced simply because an officer decides their dignity is optional." A sharp intake of breath swept through the gallery. Kane's shoulders stiffened, his face burning red, his bravado stripped bare. Marcus's gaze locked on him. "Officer Kane, you didn't know who I was. And that is the point. You didn't need to. No citizen should require a title or a robe or a name for you to treat them with respect. The law is not a weapon to wield against the vulnerable. The badge you wear is not a shield against accountability." Kane opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. His throat bobbed, his lips pressed tight, and his eyes darted toward the presiding judge, then away, like a man cornered with nowhere left to turn. Marcus let the silence stretch before finishing. His voice lowered, solemn, but it carried through every corner of the chamber. "Yesterday, Officer Kane believed his authority made him untouchable. Today, this courtroom proves otherwise. Bias has no place in law enforcement. Arrogance has no place in justice. And abuse of power has no place in this city. The gavel struck again. Crack! The words lingered in the air like a final judgment. Unshakable, undeniable. Justice was finally served. Oftentimes, silence isn't weakness. It's strength. And arrogant people like Officer Kane don't get to notice until it's too late. Do you also believe this? Click the subscribe button. There are many more stories like this worth sharing.